So over the years, we have seen Bitcoin rise to unfathomable heights. I mean, it's so hard to believe that an asset that was worth just around 8 cents about a decade ago has seen price peaks of over $65,000. But still, even though Bitcoin is known as the greatest performing asset of all time, that doesn't mean it's completely bulletproof. I mean, I want to believe that Bitcoin will be here for generations, and the BTC that I'm accumulating now will hopefully create wealth so that my great-great-grandchildren won't have to work a day in their lives. Those lazy bums. But to only focus on the upside and not consider the reality that Bitcoin could be worthless someday would be just highly irresponsible. So go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because today in this video you're going to learn a few likely scenarios that could happen, and if so, would send Bitcoin to $0. You're going to see only the most feasible situations that could destroy Bitcoin, and make sure you stay to the end because you're going to learn what I believe is the actual #1 threat to Bitcoin. My goal is to help you stay prepared, so if you see any of those telltale signs, you can take action to protect your portfolio. So let's jump in. So I'm sure that if we sat here long enough, we could come up with numerous creative ways Bitcoin could go to $0. Yes, if aliens invaded Earth and decided to enslave the human race, Bitcoin could become worthless. But I mean, what is the likelihood of that, right? Instead, I want to share with you a few real cases that could actually happen based on our current economical and political climate. Oh, and by the way, none of this is financial advice. So the first danger to Bitcoin is #1, government ban. So for years, we have seen governments from around the world make indirect and direct threats to shut down Bitcoin. And to some degree, this makes complete sense. Bitcoin and the greater crypto market is slowly ushering in a new approach to a global financial system. And while this offers a variety of benefits to those who participate in this new financial system, it's also a risk to those who want to protect our traditional system. It really comes down to this. Currently, thanks to technology, our global economy relies on international trade. I mean, whether we're exporting cars to the UK or importing avocados from Mexico, what helps facilitate those transactions is the recognition and the use of a reserve currency. Now, a reserve currency is basically money that a central bank or a country's treasury must hold in its reserves to participate in foreign transactions. And there are a few reserve currencies out there like the euro and the Japanese yen, but our current world reserve currency is the US dollar. And so if India, for example, wanted to import oil to its country, they can't just use their rupee for the transaction, they would need to use the US dollar. So governments all around the world are responsible for keeping a healthy reserve currency supply on hand. And as you can imagine, this creates a steady demand for reserve currencies, and in turn, that demand helps balance the value of those currencies as well. So the question really is this: if in the future we're able to use Bitcoin to settle foreign transactions, what would happen to the value of the US dollar and other globally recognized currencies? I mean, if countries are no longer required to borrow US dollars and hold US dollars in their reserves, could the US dollar sustain its buying power? The answer is maybe, but probably not. And so the point is, governments have a sworn duty to act in the best interest of the nation, and if it's believed that Bitcoin could threaten our well-being, then it only makes sense for them to, ban it outright like China has done, or to create so much regulatory interference that the asset basically becomes unusable and therefore becomes worthless. Now, although this could happen, a government ban is not the biggest threat to me. Yes, Bitcoin can be viewed as a threat to our current financial system, but in all regards, our financial system is broken and change is necessary. 80% of all US dollars in existence were printed in the last 2 years. And so now we're in a situation where the ship is sinking. However, Bitcoin could be the lifeboat that pulls us out of this mess. So a government ban definitely threatens Bitcoin and could drop it to $0. But this next threat is a little bit more likely to me, and that is number 2, political interference. So in the last few years, the conversation around regulating crypto has massively increased, which makes sense, right? I mean, crypto is growing in popularity, and so regulatory bodies have to finally take it seriously. Now, some believe that regulating Bitcoin sort of steals away from the freedom that is packaged in the decentralized makeup of the network. And there are others that recognize that until we have clear guidelines on how this new asset class will be treated, it sort of bars bigger money, like institutional money, like Wells Fargo and JP Morgan, from, really getting down and dirty in the space. And so, me personally, I'm all for a certain level of regulation, but the problem is around those who are empowered to regulate crypto. I mean, we're relying on individuals who have zero exposure to the asset and very limited understanding of its mechanics to come up with laws that fit the market. And we have seen the government's lack of understanding in the crypto industry play out time and time again. Included in President Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure bill was a provision that gave the Treasury Department authority to force tax compliance on crypto brokers, which shouldn't be a big deal because, in our country, we have to pay taxes. Everyone knows that. The problem was in the vagueness in the term broker. The way the provision was written, I mean, anybody could have been a broker. I mean, you could have been a broker, I could have been a broker, anybody could have been a broker. And so this creates an almost impossible responsibility for crypto companies operating in the US just trying to comply with this provision. Most companies will just either operate overseas or just close up shop altogether. And so, if something as small as the way brokers are referenced in a provision causes confusion and could have huge negative consequences on growth and development in the space, there could definitely be future regulations that politicians propose that could attack the value of Bitcoin, either directly through some type of impossible compliance requirement or indirectly through ambiguous terminology. And so we could be just like one bad bill or one poorly worded provision away from Bitcoin being completely abandoned and going to $0. Now, even though the majority of our decision-making government doesn't really understand crypto, and the one who has already been given a level of authority over the space, Janet Yellen, seems to be on like some sort of witch hunt, I still don't see political interference as the biggest threat out there. Regulation is important, and it's important that we participate in the forming of crypto laws, but the crypto community has spoken up over the last few years, and it seems that for now, our voices are being heard. And so, as the community grows and we continue to be vocal, we should see more sensible regulations. So again, although political interference is a danger to Bitcoin and could send it to $0, this last threat is the biggest in my opinion, and I actually do believe that this has a good chance of happening. And that's number 3, competing blockchains. So why is Bitcoin useful? I mean, if you really think about it, it's not really a currency because of the tax consequence on every transaction. And although the network can process transactions fairly quickly at about 7 transactions per second, that's actually pretty slow in comparison to credit card networks like Visa and MasterCard, who can process over 1,700 transactions per second. So why is there even a demand for Bitcoin? It really comes down to Bitcoin being a store of value like gold or ancient art. Our paper money, like the US dollar, is losing its buying power daily, and so stores of value are meant to retain its current value or to appreciate over time. And so although the Bitcoin network receives heavy usage on a daily basis, most who are buying Bitcoin are buying into an asset that is a store of value. With that said, over the last few years, we have seen the launching and the growth of other competing chains like Ethereum, like Cardano, and like Solana. These blockchains offer the same capabilities as Bitcoin, but they also offer so much more. Through the use of smart contracts, these competing blockchains provide access to DeFi, NFTs, and they give other developers a platform to launch their own projects. So the usefulness of these competing networks have increased, which in turn has created explosive growth for many of these notable blockchains. I mean, we can see the growth in every metric. I mean, if you're tracking Ethereum or Cardano, for example, you will see increases in price and increases in the number of users and increases in the number of transactions. And one notable metric that has been slowly decreasing is Bitcoin dominance, which is basically how much of the total market Bitcoin owns. Now, it's important to mention that there are more cryptos launched every day. And, of course, that's going to eat away at Bitcoin's dominance. But conversely, Ethereum dominance has been on the rise. And so this tells an interesting but almost like predictable story. Crypto is no longer just a speculative market. It now rewards usefulness. Ethereum is in a strong number 2 position in the overall market because, you can buy NFTs and participate in DeFi and do so much through their network. And that usefulness is only growing. And so heavy usage and major community adoption could birth a new store of value. It's only logical to want to play in the sandbox where all the action is happening. So Ethereum's growth definitely could pull Bitcoin holders out of that network and into the Ethereum network, which could melt Bitcoin to $0. But Ethereum is not the only threat. Ethereum is riddled with their own issues like insane gas prices that developers have been working on fixing for years. It's sort of like their blessing and their curse of being the first in the space. But while Ethereum is patching up their network, there are other blockchains like Cardano who have been patient and, have watched the technology evolve in the space and is working to build a network that could operate for centuries. Cardano has so far lived up to its promises, and if they continue to do so, Cardano could be dangerous to Bitcoin. So with the fierce competition out there, I see that it's highly possible for another blockchain to completely remove Bitcoin from the space. If Bitcoin is no longer a store of value, then what is it, right? But the one piece of hope you can hold on to is that if Bitcoin implodes to zero because of a competing blockchain, it most likely won't happen in the near future, so you should have time to watch and prepare. But let me know your thoughts. Could Bitcoin reach $0 one day? Or, will it be here forever? Please let me know in the comments. Also, what other threats did I fail to mention? Also, please let me know in the comments. And lastly, I want to thank you for your time. Your time is so valuable to me, so I do hope you found value. And until next time.